Welcome to Public Health America, a weekly program produced by BronxNet in partnership with Mercy College. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. Here on Public Health America, we speak with experts from an array of specialties across the liberal arts and health professions to provide you with not only the best science, but practical tips to live a healthier life. We also celebrate what studies have long documented, namely the unparalleled value of a liberal arts college education by setting the stage to pursue a career of your choice, increase lifetime earnings, and engage in civil debate. Our experts will share decisions they made and support they received that helped them to beat the odds. By sharing one or two life lessons, their stories may provide you with the inspiration and method to realize your dreams. This is Public Health America. Welcome to Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. It's a pleasure to have with us today Dr. Eduardo Gómez, Professor of Community and Population Health at Lehigh University. Eduardo, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
So I'm very excited to talk about your book, your recent book, published by Johns Hopkins University Press, my old stomping grounds, Junk Food Politics, where you're talking about the politic of junk food and beverages as it impacts international developing and evolving countries. Tell us a little bit about your book.
Sure. Well, the book is a political science approach to try and understand how the rise and influence of major beverage and ultra-processed food companies is shaping policymaking, politics, and civil society in several emerging middle-income countries. And so I look at corporations like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Nestle, Mondelez International, looking at countries like Brazil, Mexico, India, China, South Africa, and looking at how these industries are influencing politics, policy, and society, but also it looks at how governments are partnering with these industries to achieve alternative social welfare objectives, and in the process benefiting these governments, particularly presidential leaders, from partnering with these corporations. So it's a different approach to a recent growing field, which is the commercial determinants of health. And it takes as a political scientist, it takes an interest group institutional approach to explaining these public health challenges. And I also look in the book at the impact that these foods have had on children and the poor in these societies, or which I call as vulnerable communities.
Sure. So that's fascinating work. So you mentioned a few countries: Brazil, South Africa, Argentina. These are all places I've been. Is the idea, I mean, let's get down to it, is what you're saying is that presidential leadership are getting kickbacks, making money, if you will, off of countrywide partnerships with very large corporations to provide entree of their products into their countries. Is that what you're saying, or is it something else?
It's something else. What I'm arguing is that presidents are often eager to partner with these industries for several benefits, not personal gain, but more for political gain. And political gain, I mean by contributing to the growth of the economy. Certainly in all these emerging economies, foreign direct investment has been critical for employment, and employment has been critical for these presidents to addressing poverty. And also for advancing social welfare campaigns, anti-hunger campaigns. And so in Brazil, for example, and Mexico, presidents have tried to partner with Nestle to sort of provide food for the poor, to eradicate hunger and malnourishment. But at the same time, these partnerships not only benefit these presidents politically in their anti-hunger campaigns, but also they're politically becoming more legitimate, more popular, but at the same time, these efforts are legitimizing industries at the same time. So that's sort of what I'm looking at in terms of presidential partnerships and interest in working with these companies.
Okay, so tweeze out for me the positive from the positive, or is it the positive from the negative? In other words, a lot of what you just said sounded pretty positive to me.
Well, it is. I mean, in general, it's admirable. Certainly, presidents and all governments should try to eradicate hunger, right, and sort of reduce unemployment. But at the same time, there's a negative in the sense that by partnering with these industries, I argue it provides legitimacy, and it also provides incentives or reasons for governments not to regulate or harm these industries with policies that affect them, right, and their profits. So, it's a difficult situation, right? The governments are in. But that's sort of there's positive but also negative implications for these partnerships.
Okay. So again, just trying to make sense of it. So it sounds like a double-edged sword to ups and downs. Like there's certain things of these partnerships that are positive, eliminating hunger, anti-hunger campaigns, helping emerging economies to grow, yet at some degree of cost to that potential society. Am I getting close?
Yes, in general, that's right. But I really do emphasize the harm of these partnerships, and it's sort of the governments really need to reconsider what these partnerships are doing. I mean, there's certainly, we all agree, we definitely want to eradicate hunger and poverty, but there could be wiser alternatives to achieving those goals rather than partnering with major industries that are arguably the contributor to ill health, right? And so that's sort of what I argue in the book.
Got it. Okay. So how does one weigh the pros and cons of that relationship, right? I mean, in other words, if I'm trying to manage a country that has significant poverty and hunger, which is almost every country on the planet, certainly not every, but many, and I don't do that partnership, what are my options? If I do the partnership and they fund an anti-hunger campaign, which has real positive impact on that society that this administration is leading, like how do you weigh the pros and cons of that? Or is that even a part of your book?
I don't go into the specifics of weighing the pros and cons. I just sort of highlight the challenges.
So what are some of the challenges?
Well, as I mentioned, the legitimacy of, providing legitimacy to these companies, and sort of, by partnering with them, you sort of provide legitimacy and broader awareness and support, but also government not having incentive to regulate these industries.
So do you make recommendations in your book about what are the options, or is it more just discursive and saying this is happening?
I provide several policy recommendations at the end, and the main one of the main ones is sort of government political leaders reevaluating their partnership with these industries.
Say that again.
One of the recommendations that I make in the end of the book is sort of government political leaders reevaluating the implications of partnering with these industries.
All right. So again, it's the essence of what are the downsides.
Right.
You're asking them to look at the downsides.
Right. Consider the downsides. Right. Yes.
Okay. Does your book discuss any potential alternatives?
It doesn't go into potential alternatives because that's sort of not what the focus is, but it sort of just emphasizes what's been happening, and sort of, what needs to be addressed and what needs to be done.
Got it. And what do you see as the next steps to your research?
Well, I think I'd like to do more research on how civil society is responding to these issues. So one of the points that I raised in my book is that in a lot of emerging middle-income countries, civil society activism and working with government, this is a new issue. And I'm really interested in learning more about how, over time, civil society activists get more empowered and how they can have a positive influence on policy by holding politicians more accountable. But civil society work in this area is very new compared to, for example, the U.S. and other advanced industrialized nations that have been working on malnutrition and health for a longer period of time. As I talk about in this book, in these emerging economies, the issue of ultra-processed foods and obesity is a very new issue. And consequently, there's very little activism. Well, there's new activism. It's brand new, but it's not as developed as in the US, where we've had a lot more years of experience with this issue. And so my next area of research is I'm looking into the civic sources of influence and holding governments accountable for improvements to policy and reevaluating these government partnerships with industry and providing more representation within government for activists to try and implement policies that affect childhood obesity and type 2 diabetes more effectively. And so that's sort of the next area of work that I'd like to go into.
Sure. I mean, certainly we've had quite a few guests that have focused on the pandemic, if you will, of obesity among children and adults. And certainly your area of research intersects with that. I would highly encourage our viewers to pick up Dr. Eduardo Gómez's book, Junk Food Politics, Johns Hopkins University Press, and learn more about this important topic. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, Dr. Gómez is going to talk a little bit about his undergraduate experience and educational experience in higher ed that provided the opportunity to do the excellent work he's doing today. This is Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. We'll be right back after a quick break.
You can now watch MNN, Brick TV, QPTV, and SIC TV on BronxNet. Tune in to BX Omni, Channel 67 Optimum, 2133 Fios during most Sunday evenings. We'll show you some amazing content from our friends at Manhattan Neighborhood Network, Brick TV in Brooklyn, Queens Public Television, and Staten Island Community Television. Every borough represented in the Boogie Down. Epic partnerships for the ages. And catch our new Next channel, produced in partnership with MNN, 24/7 on BronxNet Channel 952 Optimum and 2138 Fios.
Most hiring algorithms would scream me out.
Some bosses couldn't see me as a leader.
I've run this place for 20 years, but I still need to prove that I'm more than what you see on paper.
I've been running code as long as I've been able to reach a keyboard.
This is what I do. It's second nature for me, coordinating 100 details at once.
It's the way my mind works. I have a very mechanical brain.
I sold them on my skills.
You gotta be so good they can't ignore you.
My magic is
Analytics and empathy. That's how I'm getting clients. You have to have the confidence in yourself to show up and defy the odds.
I'm more than who I am on paper.
I never got a college degree. And today, I'm the CEO of my own company. People want to tell me I'm one in a million, when actually I'm one of millions. Stars are all around us. It's time for them to shine.
Welcome back to Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. So Eduardo, we always start this part of the segment with the exact same question. Tell us where you were born and about some of your formative experiences.
Great. Well, thank you. I was born in Arlington, Virginia, born and raised there, and went to, well, first, before going to college, I enlisted in the U.S. Air Force and was stationed at the Air Force Academy, Texas, San Antonio Air Force Academy. And then I went to the University of Virginia for my undergraduate degree, and I studied politics and foreign affairs. And it was really a great opportunity for me to explore. I was very much interested in political economy issues and policy reform and the politics of that. And I knew since the very beginning, when I went to Virginia, that I really wanted to go in higher education and go either to law school or do a PhD. And by my second year at Virginia, I realized I wanted to go into do a PhD, become a university professor. And I think a great experience that I had that really revealed to me that I loved research was when I was at the University of Virginia, I started this Society of Political Economy, which brought together academics from Virginia, but also Washington, D.C. area, and policymakers to talk about economic reform in developing nations. And I was really saw this as an opportunity to bring speakers in, but also to do research with my friends about this topic. And we would meet weekly to talk about these issues and listen to guest speakers. And I think that was for me, a realization that was sort of my passion of doing research and engaging researchers in the academic community. And that's what I've done ever since. And the professors that I had there were amazing. They were very supportive, and I've always been very supportive. And then from there, I went to University of Chicago for my master's, worked for 1 year at the Rand Corporation doing research in Arlington, and then I went to Brown for my PhD. And then that sort of was my academic background. And I've always been a political scientist doing research in health. And I didn't really focus on health at the very beginning. It wasn't until when I was at Brown, I had done some research on politics of decentralization and wrote an article, my first article for a journal, a major journal, and a professor at Harvard School of Public Health read it and emailed me and invited me to be in residence at the Harvard School of Public Health while I was finishing my PhD at Brown. And so through that connection, I became very interested in the politics of health. And in fact, I decided to pretty much change my whole PhD dissertation topic onto the politics of health in the US and Brazil, based on my experience working at the Harvard School of Public Health and realizing there was a need for political scientists to work in the area of global health. And so I think that was the second major moment in my academic career, was that invitation to be in residence at the Harvard School of Public Health and really explore the politics of global health. So that was my trajectory in the past. I only had 1 year where I worked outside of academia at the Rand Corporation, and many would say that that's not really even a departure from academia, because Rand is a very research-focused non-governmental organization. But all my career, I've always been focused on academic research, and my undergraduate career was really critical for me to get that exposure and that realization through the Society of Political Economy. That's something I wanted to do.
That's great. What a great story and an amazing trajectory. Eduardo, Society of Political Economy, undergraduate days, Virginia, is that a group you put together?
Yes. I put it together. Yeah.
You did that as an undergrad?
Yes. And what happened was one of the first classes I took at Virginia was called The Politics of Economic Reform with Professor John Echeverry-Gent, who's been a wonderful colleague ever since. And I loved the class so much that I took it again. And it was from that class that I developed this idea, an interest in political economy, and developed this group, this student-based group. We actually became an official government, student government organization with a treasurer and everything. And then I think it lasted for a while after I left. I don't think it's still around. But yeah, it was completely from my class that I took and finding other classmates that were interested in this topic and just bringing together all these classmates. And it was difficult back then. There was really, email was brand new. There were no real good websites with students, so it was hard to find out where I met all my students through my classes. And so it was really fun. And I think it really, it really helped other students as well. They're interested in the topic.
Great story. I think clearly in that anecdote is a very clear example of how doing your undergraduate degree gave you opportunities to do some exciting things that was really initiated by you. Even though you were doing it as a student, you were involving faculty, students at a regional level, and that gave you a kind of experience and reach that just wouldn't have been possible anywhere else, I would suggest. And I don't mean not at another college, I just mean at college generally. Were there so you talked a little bit about where you were born. What was the frame of reference? Did you know you were always going to go to college? Were there any challenges that you faced thinking about or getting into college and or at college?
Yes.
So what were some of the challenges?
Well, I think, I wasn't, when I was in high school, I was certainly, I just didn't take it very seriously. I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do. I really had no direction, and I really thought hard about what I could do to serve my country and bring structure to my life. And so I think it was my dad, or I can't remember who brought the idea of the Air Force, but I think I was the only one that I know of off the top of my head in my high school to enlist. And I saw it as an opportunity to serve my country and also really find myself and develop myself. And that's what it came from. So I saw it as an opportunity. I had a challenge of not really being serious. And not that I wasn't serious, but I didn't have much direction in high school. My parents never went to college. None of my family. I was the first one to go to college, and so I really needed some kind of an opportunity to really expose myself to the opportunities out there and to do something for my country. And I thought the military was the best decision I ever made, really. I don't think I would be here today if it wasn't for the Air Force, because it really opened my eyes to the reality of life and being responsible for my decisions and listening to peers and authority. And so it was a real enlightening moment for me. But what's interesting is as soon as I got into the Air Force, about a year into the Air Force, I realized that I didn't want to make the military a career. And I really wanted to go into academia or to go to university and pursue something else. But that was sort of my background and my challenge is just not having that much structure in high school and thinking that looking for something that would provide me with an opportunity and structure at the same time serving my country.
Sure. So it seems like an important theme there, which I think is so important to say out loud, is that like so many young people in any generation, when you were 18, you didn't know what you wanted to do. I mean, there are far worse sins than that, in my humble opinion. Yes. And you joined the Air Force, and that gave you some structure and helped you sort of think through the next steps. And then once you hit the educational path, as far as I can tell, you never look back.
Right.
So I think an important point to your story is that if you're 18 and you don't know exactly what you want to do, that's okay. And it's a question of finding a place. And ultimately, in your case, the Air Force was critically helpful. And then beyond that, your education gave you the experience and the opportunity and the mentors that provided you with the ability to go forward and have this great career.
Yes, absolutely. That's absolutely right. And That's exactly right. It was, and I think that, I always tell my students, all throughout my career, I've had a lot of students that come to me, freshmen, not knowing what they want to do, not knowing what they want to study. And, in my case, when I was at Virginia, I thought I was going to be a lawyer my first semester. And it was that class that I told you, the politics of economic reform, that changed my whole interest. And I decided not to be a lawyer. And so I always tell my students, even if they go to college at 18, to keep an open mind and to consider other things that they may have never considered before, because they never know. Your interest can change. I think oftentimes students are worried that they have to have a focus right away. They have to do something right away. I always think it's a great opportunity to take, a gap year, to do something in the community, or go into the military or some kind of service before going to college. You're doing it while you're in college. So I think those are those years, 18, 19, when you're really starting to develop what your interests are. And, I spent many years teaching in the UK, and there they have a 3-year undergraduate structure. So you really go in and you're focused on a topic. What I love about our higher education system in the US is that we have 4 years and we have more flexibility in what students can study. And I think that's a little more advantageous for students, because I agree with you that at that young age, you really still are open-minded. You're still trying to form your interests and ideas.
Sure. A great story, and a lot of explicit and implicit advice that can help our viewers. I want to thank Dr. Eduardo Gómez for joining us today. I want to thank our viewers for tuning in. This is Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. Until next time, take care.